Welcome to my channel. I'm Gary Wiryawan, and today I want to share my story of how I got into micro four thirds as well as why I don't go into full frame. Let's go. Now, before we continue with today's video, if you are a current subscriber of my channel, welcome. I hope that you will enjoy this video, and thank you always for your support for my channel. And if you're a new viewer of my channel, also welcome. I hope that you will also enjoy this video. In my channel, I talk about photography, filmmaking, camera, micro four thirds lenses, as well as music, guitar, home recording, rock, metal, that kind of stuff. So if you are into those kind of things, please consider subscribing to my channel. Now let's continue with the video. So today I want to share my story of how I got into micro four thirds system. But before that, you might be asking this question: Gary, why do you always make this video about micro four thirds? You always talk about this micro four thirds camera, this micro four thirds lens, that camera, that lens, whatsoever. Why is that? And the reason is simple. It's because I love micro four thirds so much. I think micro four thirds changed my life. There's a lot of things that I really like from micro four thirds, that I really enjoy from micro four thirds, that always inspire me to create something, to make a photo, to create a video, to film something. And it's just so enjoyable, and it's been part of my life and it keep me inspired, and it's just so important for me. I make a video about why I love micro four thirds so much. I will link it up here on the card. But anyway, here's my story of how I get into micro four thirds. So it started back in 2012. I want to start a new hobby. I want to try photography. And at that time, the only options were Canon DSLR or Nikon DSLR. There's already some mirrorless camera around, but I don't really know much about mirrorless. Everybody just talks about Canon and Nikon. And my first camera was Canon 650D, or it's known by Rebel T4i. As I started to use the Rebel T4i or the 650D, I started to learn that there's a camera system that's called full frame. I was using what they call APS-C crop sensor camera. And full frame is like the dream. It's like what you have to have if you have the money. It's like your goal to have a full frame camera. Meanwhile, around that time, around 2013, 2014, I started to travel a lot. I went to a lot of different kind of places like Singapore, South Korea, Japan, Norway, United States, all that kind of places. And when I carry my camera during travel, I started to realize that it's heavy, especially if I have multiple lenses with me together, and it's not easy to carry around, and it's conspicuous. Everybody looks at me. I'm like the center of attention, especially if I carry a big honking camera with a large lens in front of it. So now my perspective about my camera started to change. My original goal, which is to obtain a full frame camera like a Canon 5D or Nikon D810, it started to fade away, and I was looking for something that is more reliable and easier to carry around, especially for travel photography and video. And that's when I started to learn about mirrorless camera. No, I haven't talked about micro four thirds yet. This is still mirrorless. And at that time, the prime candidate for my mirrorless system was Fujifilm, as well as the original Sony Alpha 7, you know, the original one. And at that time, it was just released, and it was also a full frame camera. However, sometime in the middle of 2014, I started to learn about micro four thirds. So one morning, I was presented with a YouTube video from David Thorpe, a photojournalist from England. And rest in peace for him, because he already passed away. But his video, he talks about why he uses micro four thirds camera. And I started to realize that, oh, maybe this is the mirrorless camera that I was looking, the one that's better for travel, and also the one that is smaller and easier to carry around without sacrificing too much in terms of image quality. I gotta be honest with you, that video from David Thorpe really planted deep inside my heart, and I started to become really curious and interested about Micro Four Thirds. And that's when my life really changed. And at that time, I was considering to have a Micro Four Thirds camera, and I started to look around. And at that time, there was a good deal on a Panasonic GX7, and I pulled the trigger and I got that camera right away. Well, I don't currently own the GX7 anymore, but my impression about that camera is that it is small, it is lightweight, and the image quality, when I compare it with my 650D, I don't know how to say it, but it's slightly better, especially in higher ISO. There's a lot of color noise with my Canon camera, with my 650D, but with the Panasonic GX7, no, it doesn't show a lot of color noise, especially on higher ISO. And I really think to myself, well, this might be the one. This might be the camera that I need for travel. And now fast forward today, I already own multiple Micro Four Thirds camera. I no longer own any of the Canon lens or camera. And now I have a whole bunch of Micro Four Thirds cameras, lenses, and accessories. And I couldn't be happier. This is what I really want. And ever since I got my Micro Four Thirds cameras, I start bringing them to a lot of different places because I travel so much. I bring them to Japan, to South Korea, to Europe, to Norway, to Switzerland, to Italy, to Svalbard, even very close to the North Pole, to Australia, New Zealand. And it just performed wonderfully. I was so pleased with the result. The image quality is good, and I have a lot of weight reduction when it comes to the camera and the lenses, and they are smaller, easier to carry around, and they're not as bulky. So I am a little bit more inconspicuous when using Micro Four Thirds compared when I'm using the Canon DSLR, because the DSLR are so big and the mirrorless Micro Four Thirds, they are small. They look almost like a toy camera. From time to time, I gotta be honest with you, sometimes I'm still curious about full frame, what if I have a full frame camera, and is there any significant jump in image quality? Is it worth the hassle of carrying them around for travel? So at that time, I was really curious about a Sony Alpha 7R as well as Canon 5D Mark III. I got a chance to borrow these cameras from some friends of mine and try them and shoot in RAW, use the best lens that they have. For the Canon, it was 2470 f2.8, and then for the Sony Alpha 7 at that time, I was trying the Zeiss 24-70 as well. And take a look at the picture, how they perform, the image quality, the autofocus, and so on. And although the image quality is better when compared to my Micro Four Thirds camera, especially in higher ISO at about 3200 and above, when I'm comparing like general purpose kind of photography, filmmaking, there's not much of a difference, especially for my needs. I don't really see that much of a jump when it comes to image quality. Well, what I noticed is that the lenses are still large and heavy, and the camera bodies, although now they get smaller and smaller, especially with the Alpha 7 from Sony, it is still, a little bit bigger, and it's not, there's something about Micro Four Thirds that I call the mojo. So these cameras, it doesn't really look interesting, but it really inspires me to shoot. There's a lot of things that I really enjoy, from the UI, from the controls and the menu system and so on. It's just very pleasing to shoot. I don't get that feeling from the Sony Alpha 7 at that time, and also from the Canon 5D Mark III. I don't know about them right now, but at that time, I wasn't really impressed by this camera, so I still stay with Micro Four Thirds. Even until right now, I'm still using Micro Four Thirds today. Now, actually, there are some things that I want to clarify when it comes to Micro Four Thirds. People consider that Micro Four Thirds have some kind of weaknesses and also some disadvantages when compared to other camera formats. And, I just want to clarify things up, and some of them are true, but some of them, if you change your perspective around, try to keep an open mind and use this weakness to your advantage, actually these weaknesses are beneficial for some types of photography or filmmaking. For example, background blur or depth of field. When you're shooting with full frame cameras, you can get more background blur, you can get shallower depth of field, and you get more bokeh as they call it. And with Micro Four Thirds, it's more difficult to produce such bokeh, especially when you're using the same aperture. However, I think this is not a weakness. If you're shooting landscape where you need to have plenty depth of field anyway and as little background blur as possible, I think this is very advantageous, using Micro Four Thirds camera for landscape. If I'm traveling, most of the time I will be shooting sceneries, landscape as well as environmental portrait. And this kind of photography really requires you to have plenty depth of field so that you can get better context about what you're shooting about. And in my opinion, Micro Four Thirds makes it easier for me to do that because it inherently has more depth of field compared to other camera system. Other things, poor low light performance. Well, yes, I'm not gonna deny that if you're using full frame camera, you can use much higher ISO when compared to Micro Four Thirds system. However, I found out that I'm comfortable shooting up to ISO 3200 and I rarely need to go above that. Next thing that people usually talk about Micro Four Thirds that they think is inferior are the lenses. Well, they think that because the lenses are small, there will be lots of imperfections, and when compared to full frame lenses, they will be inferior. Well, I have to clarify that actually these lenses are actually amazing. This lens right here, this is the 14 to 140mm f3.5 to f5.6. This was one of the first lenses that I bought for my Micro Four Thirds camera system, and the reason is I already own another super zoom lens from Tamron for my Canon DSLR at that time. It is the 18 to 270 f3.5 to 6.3 if I'm not mistaken. And I'm not happy with that lens. The image quality is not sharp in my opinion. It's not contrasty enough. There's lack of micro contrast. There's lack of details. And also vignetting is a problem as well as barrel distortion. So when I purchased this lens, my expectation for this lens was not high. If it can shoot pictures that is good enough, then it is more than enough for me. However, when I started to use this lens with my Panasonic GX7, I was blown away. The image quality is almost perfect. Well, yes, it is not as sharp when compared to like my Olympus 75mm, which is actually really sharp. Or compared to my Olympus 45mm f1.8, which is also really sharp and not expensive as well. However, it has lots of contrast, the detail is plenty enough for my needs, and it doesn't have crazy vignetting or crazy barrel distortion. Everything is just, normal enough for me to consider it as a super zoom lens, and I'm very happy with this lens. And no surprise, my other lenses, they perform really well too. And that's when I really think that Micro Four Thirds lenses, they are the best. Another crazy example of excellent Micro Four Thirds lens is this guy right here. The Laowa 7.5mm f2. In full frame terms, it's gonna be 15mm. And if you do the aperture equivalency, it's gonna be f4. 15mm f4 in full frame, it's gonna be large, it's gonna be heavier, it's gonna have, more bulbous kind of front element, and, it's not gonna be a pleasant lens to use when compared to this guy right here. So yeah, this is one of another hidden gem of Micro Four Thirds lenses. This guy right here, 100 to 300mm ultra telephoto lens. In full frame terms, it's 200 to 600. If you compare this to a full frame 200 and 600, this looks pretty small, but the reach is about the same. And that's amazing because that means that this is lighter, easier to carry around, and you can use this for travel. So what I'm trying to say in this video to you is that I really love and enjoy Micro Four Thirds systems so much. I really enjoy to use them for travel. They are very inspiring. They make me want to go out and shoot a picture and record a video, create something, go back home and enjoy that picture or video that I took. And I really want to share this love to you all. People need to know more about Micro Four Thirds. I think it is an excellent camera system for travel. it is not a toy camera. It is a real camera, and it's a professional camera system. In my opinion, you can do some professional work with it. I know that some people that I know, my friends, they use Micro Four Thirds for professional wedding photography as well as for commercial projects as well. So it's not a toy camera. It's not just for enthusiasts like you and me. And you know, I really wish that Micro Four Thirds will become more popular and, you know, become considered more and more by people who are traveling. And I hope that people will see the benefits of using Micro Four Thirds compared to full frame, even though they are both mirrorless. And that wraps up today's video. So that is all for today's video. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that this video inspires you to love Micro Four Thirds more, and I really hope that this is also informative for you. So please comment down below, what is your preferred camera system? Are you using Micro Four Thirds or are you using something else? And if you have any question about this video about Micro Four Thirds, also comment down below. I will try my best to answer. Also, don't forget to support my small channel by liking this video, sharing this video, and subscribing to my channel down below. It will really help me a lot to motivate me to keep making these videos for you. So that's all. Thank you and goodbye.